Hello and welcome to Mousecast, the podcast where the mind meets the magic. Hey, we've got a full house tonight. Hawk is with us here. Matt is here. So is Megan, and then myself, and we have a special guest with us tonight. You have seen him plenty in the chat. It is Thom Brewer of Roanoke, Virginia. So Thom is here with me here in the great state of Virginia and Southwest. So Thom, welcome to Mousecast. You've made it out of the chat and come actually onto the air.
I feel like I've made the big time. It's a big step from the chat into the camera. I'm excited.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here. Hawk is here. This is going to be interesting. We've got Thom up this way and Hawk kind of down this way. Notice they're on opposite sides when it comes to Carousel of Progress. But before we get into the Carousel of Progress, actually we got 5 here, so I want to make a quick adjustment here and got to add another person on. So let me see here. Add an item, a camera slot, and we're going to add Megan in as well. It's almost like doing the Brady Bunch here. We'll do it like that. Save, and there we go. Save as new layout. So, guys, Megan, where'd you go? Nope, where'd you go? You should have been there. Hold on. And is that it? 5. Here it is. 5. There we go. There we go. I had to actually do it. So we've got 5 now with us. So we were going to talk about, though, the question of the week from last week, because frankly, it leads right into what we're talking about now. We asked the question of what's your number one way to beat the heat at Walt Disney World, and very clearly, you all are saying a long inside attraction. At 85% said a long inside attraction. The only other response that did get a little bit of attention was resort pool at 14%. No one interested in the water park, water attraction, their favorite frozen snack or cold drink. So pretty much all of you are interested in a long indoor attraction, which of course leads us straight to our favorite friends over at the Carousel of Progress, which of course is probably one of the best indoor attractions to enjoy and a way to beat the heat, at least for now, because it is going away. And so we did have, it's shouldn't say going away, it's changing. So Disney today announced, or on May 28th, so just a few days ago, Disney did announce that the Carousel of Progress is going to undergo really the largest renovation in its history since the 1964-65 World's Fair, when it was built and when it was created. So I thought we'd first kind of walk through a little bit about just kind of the Carousel of Progress itself. And Thom, you are a self-proclaimed Carousel of Progress aficionado, enthusiast. I believe you had said that it's like your top 3 of all-time Disney attractions. So what is it about the Carousel of Progress that makes you rank it so highly that this is a must-do for you?
Well, first of all, I'm the same age as the Carousel of Progress, so we're both from '64. I just find it relaxing. I love the song. It's I particularly like the 1940s scene. If I could design my kitchen like that, I'd have it. Just the narration is relaxing. And again, it's cool. And I'm talking both. It's cool to me in attitude, but it's also just cool. A good place to get out of the Florida sun for 20 minutes and enjoy it.
Hawk's playing with chat. He says air conditioning. Tom's real answer here. And yes, there is a benefit about but air conditioning. But it is kind of interesting when you look at the Carousel of Progress has a history behind it. Again, starting out, it was one of those World's Fair attractions that it got started not at Disneyland, obviously not at Walt Disney World. It got started in New York because it went and was one of the attractions for the 1964 World's Fair, 1964-65 World's Fair. And, so a quick question. So who all knows, we've talked about this before, what is the last name of the family in the Carousel of Progress?
The Peabody family.
It is the Peabody family. And you only hear this in the original narration from the 64-65 World's Fair. Once it moved...
If you're from the Northeast, that's Peabody, by the way.
Peabody?
Peabody family.
Yeah. Yep. So, Thom, talk to me a little bit about, kind of its It's Genesis, and it's really cool that this was something that was designed for all of that, and then Walt was brilliant because he intentionally. Let's see here. We have one who says, definitely for me, the air conditioning in the nice dark environment, and confession, one of my first times on it, I actually nodded off a couple of times until they did the song and scene switch. And so, there we go. And so, yes, it is Hawk's deep, dark secret that he does confess that he loves the Carousel of Progress.
It is breaking news that the Carousel of Progress is actually finally making progress. So this is a big thing. This is good news.
It is. But yeah, I mean, this is one of those quintessential. I think that's going to lead to some of the discussion that we're going to have. This carries the same level of aura as It's a Small World, as the original Space Mountain, as Peter Pan's Flight, as Cinderella Castle or Sleeping Beauty Castle itself. I mean, this is like quintessential, iconic Disney. So let's see here. Another one comment came in and said, we were going to force Hawk to go on Carousel one time. We are. There's going to come a point where Tom and I are going to come down to Orlando. Somehow we're going to hijack Hawk and we're going to frog march him onto Carousel of Progress.
Aerosmith has left Disney World, but they do have a song very well known called "Dream On" that highlighted this particular moment.
It's just a dream away, man.
Yeah,
it is just a dream away.
That's the rumor.
Well, and to go to Tom's comment, talking about the music, of course, everybody thinks about, Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, but of course there was another song there, Tom, Now Is the Time, and Hawk, Now Is the Time. See, so there you go. Now is the best time. And you can have, as they said, the time of your life. So getting into some of the changes that are being talked about, and for more, I encourage you to go read the May 28 article on the Disney Parks blog. They do a nice job of giving kind of the history and the evolution of it, about the Carousel of Progress. But as we kind of get down into it, this is not the first announcement of changes coming to the carousel. Months and months ago, Disney announced that the Walt Disney animatronic that currently is on display, or a version of it that's on display over at Disneyland, is coming to that introduction scene at Carousel of Progress. And that's the current scene that right now just has the Carousel of Progress logo, and it just kind of explains about the history of Carousel of Progress. So I thought we would stop here real quickly. Tom, as our Carousel of Progress expert, what do you think about adding Walt to one of the last attractions that Walt Disney ever worked on?
I actually really like this, and a lot of people will trying to accuse me of stopping the progress, but I like this. I like the scene with Walt. From what I've seen, the animatronic is really good. I haven't heard what it sounds like, but I actually like this part of it. What I assumed is that they were just going to change the opening scene with the Carousel of Progress wheel and put them there. And I think that'd be great. So it's nice to see Walt, because a lot of the younger people hitting the parks really don't even know what Walt looked like, because we grew up, or I grew up, watching them on Sunday nights opening up A Wonderful World of Disney. So I knew what Walt looked like, but a lot of people probably have never seen him. So I really like this.
Anybody else thoughts? Go ahead.
I was going to ask Tom a question though, because as you know, and I respect Tom a lot, as much as we jump back and forth for his opinion and passion with Carousel of Progress. It's just not my thing, right? But that being said, as a Disney purist a little bit, who really loves the nostalgic attraction and has that connection to it, I love the idea that they're bringing Walt in. But are they bringing Walt in at the wrong time? If they're revamping this totally, isn't it kind of changing the whole concept in a sense? So how does that work with, you're bringing Walt in almost for nostalgic and dramatic effect to kind of tie it all together and tell the story, but now we'll change the story. Like, is this the right time for that? And I've heard it discussed from both angles on this already. I'm just curious to your thoughts, Tom, because as the purist, I liked the idea of adding Walt and having an opening scene where there was the opportunity to kind of express what this was and the history behind it. But now you're going to have a whole new concept, and now you're bringing Walt in. It just doesn't make sense to me in the same realm.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. It would have been a lot better 20 years ago. Just replace that opening diorama or whatever you want to call it with Walt then. That's actually very true. And they're going to, from what I understand, they're going to open the show with the moon launch. And Walt wasn't around much after that. So yeah, that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. It would have made a lot more sense to do it when you still had the turn of the century and the 20s and the 40s, because that's when Walt was alive and growing up.
Yeah, it does. So what I can only guess, again, we have no idea what the original intent, I think, when this was first announced a while ago, that this Walt Disney scene was going to be a lot more talking about the Epcot, as you can even see in the photos, right here. I mean, you can see, there's there we go. There's Progress City, right there, and talking about Epcot and the Florida project and some of the things that, was Walt Disney's idea and kind of as a launcher into the attraction. But now it looks like that we are going to be seeing, and as it talks about, the first act is going to be the 1960s. Walt Disney, of course, passed away very early in the 60s, and so this is something that he's almost going to be kind of like launching the future and quite literally pitching to the future. So this first act is going to be, as you see here, talking about all the things with the 60s, and they're in the summer of '69, and as it says, they're talking about the historic moon landing. Obviously, we're going to be probably hearing another bit of Walter Cronkite. Could we have Walter Cronkite in the same line in two attractions, one in Spaceship Earth and now one in Carousel of Progress? What do you guys think about starting here? So the whole point is that our scenes, everything is being rewritten from scratch. What do you guys think, Megan?
I'm torn on this. I'm torn on this whole thing just because I do feel the nostalgia. I wasn't, I was born in the 80s, so the 60s and before, none of it hits me.
You were born in Act 2?
I was born in Act 2.
Yes. Born in Act 2.
Okay.
Born in Act 2. But
Hawk and I were in between Act 1 and 2, so there you go.
I've ridden Carousel Progress so many times, and there's scenes in that bring me back to conversations with my grandparents about what it was like when they grew up. My grandmother's favorite movie, and she brought me into it, was Meet Me in St. Louis. It reminds me a lot of that family and the evolution of that year that they show in that movie. So there's definitely a lot of like personal memories and nostalgia tied to the current version. And I'm a little sad to see those go away, but I'm withholding, my opinion to see what exactly this all looks like. I don't think any of this looks bad. I just think it's the loss of what is familiar that's a little bit painful. And that's always how it is when Disney changes an attraction or replaces an attraction. That's just kind of how it goes.
So with all this almost feels like another, missed opportunity that Disney seems to be doing a lot of stuff right now that when you step outside and step away from it, it almost, I don't want to say always looks, because it doesn't. They've done some great things, but it often looks like maybe you should have thought this out a little more and done it a little differently. Like, if you're going to focus that opening scene with him talking about the city of tomorrow and everything else, shouldn't that be in Epcot? Like, shouldn't that be part of the story being told there? Like, maybe that's something that gets incorporated to Spaceship Earth. Maybe that's something that, there are so many in my opinion, it's just like Disney has kind of swung and missed, and they're working so hard to try to get stuff done. And they're so focused on what needs the refurb and where we're going to make the change that they kind of, we've talked about it. They've lost continuity in a lot of the parks. They've lost some of the storytelling. They've lost some of the relevance of what's going on in the parks themselves. And I think, like, I really hope and pray that Josh D'Amaro, as the new CEO, starts to take some of that missed opportunity and kind of repair it and try to bring back some of the continuity to the park and some of the storytelling in its real proper area. I don't think it's a fault that they're having Walt talk about something and then entice people to go over and learn about Epcot and go to Epcot. I understand it. It's not like a horrendous miss, but it's a subtle miss, in my opinion. It's just like, I think there's things they could be doing better that they're just kind of like, it'll work there. We can do it there. And I wish they would put a little more into it and a little more thought of that history. And, like, I know, Tom, we were just kind of discussing the timing of everything. And it's just interesting that when you're finally going to bring Walt and his vision to it, you're now going to make all the scenes after Walt passed, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, where's the continuity? Where's the story there? Where's that connection? And maybe they do a great job making that script connect, and maybe they do a great job with it. And maybe when you all go on it, you'll come out and be like, Hawk, they got it right. And I'll say, that's fantastic. I'm still not going to ride it.
Well, it's interesting. And Matt, I want to hear what you think here. In some respects, the more as we're talking about this, the more I'm feeling like this is almost like we're trying to do Horizons again, but just use Horizons to replace Carousel of Progress. What do you think, Matt?
So I never did Horizons. So my familiarity with it is pretty limited outside of it was at Epcot and now an empty space. So, but as we're kind of talking, and I know with Walt introducing the show, and it seems like more of a focus on Epcot, I think Walt always wanted to push forward, and I think this kind of will lead into like, all right, we got up to a certain point with the current version of Carousel of Progress. Now we're going to take it and we're going to move it forward even more because some of the scenes are just, we're past that. We're almost getting to the point where, you're talking to the stove and that final steam was setting the temperature. We have that now. Like, that's not in the future. That's now. Virtual reality. That's now. So, especially that last scene, like, it needed a revamp to, like, what could the future hold? Because Walt was always looking into the future, like, what can we do to improve people's lives? And I think, but if you start way back where it is now, it doesn't make any sense to try to bring it forward. So starting where they're going to start, especially with the thought of, we're going to do the moon landing. Okay, great. Like, and having Walt, like, introduce it and going from there, I think it's just to me personally, it's a good starting point. It does seem a little mismatched because it does seem like, we see that, the initial artwork there of, Epcot, and it's like, okay, yeah, this seems more like a Spaceship Earth kind of introduction.
Not
but at the same time, like, Epcot was supposed to be like
Epcot.
Yeah. What's that?
I don't think it's necessarily Spaceship Earth. That was just a random thing I threw out. Like, but Epcot,
that would make sense though, because that to me also needs a refurb too. Like, that one is still stuck in the past, and I think that could be updated as well to bring that more into the future a little bit more, and to have it's at Epcot, and if you want to see progression, which is one of the Walt's biggest things, having that kind of like, even if it's in like a queue of some sort, like having that as the introduction, like, would make a little bit more sense than what we're being shown here, but still having Walt in some capacity of maybe still talking about like progression in the future, because this is in Tomorrowland. I'm kind of interested to see what way they go with this, because to me this is just kind of like initial artwork. Maybe they'll get some kind of feedback and be like, okay, maybe we need to change this up a little bit because it's not quite, it's a little bit of a miss. Because I mean, the ride's not even closed and it's going to be down until next year. So I wonder if they will get some kind of feedback.
Yeah.
So,
what's interesting on that, and part of that feedback, I wonder, Tom, and I thought maybe you could kind of elaborate on this a little bit, is, and one of the reasons that we saw a change to Splash Mountain to go over to Tiana's was this idea of relevance. That, Song of the South, just for today's, I mean, nobody, except for Tom, Hawk, and myself, even saw Song of the South and have any real knowledge and understanding of what Song of the South is. It's just, it's not relevant to today's groups. Same thing here, I think, with Carousel of Progress. Tom, what do you think? Is there an issue with relevance that, the current Carousel of Progress literally is now a century ago, starts a century ago. So is there something that they want to try and bring relevance back into the attraction?
Well, I'm sure there are, but this is my biggest problem with the revamp. And if you want to talk relevance, if you want to talk progress, there was probably, and especially in Walt's life, there was probably no period that we saw more progress in America than right after the Second World War up into the 60s. So I would have left the 40s and redone it. I'm sure this new ride isn't going to be pushing the GE appliances like the current Carousel Progress. But if you really want to talk progress, we saw more from the 1940s through the 1960s. And if you want to show progress, you need to show where we started and where we end, and not just pick it up in the middle. That you don't see as much progress if you start in the middle and go forward. So this is the problem I have. I would like.
So your biggest issue is the starting point.
Yes,
and I agree with Tom there at some level, but at the same time, I think you're taking the lifespan right now, right? Who's still alive at their youngest? The people, my parents' generation, were teenagers during that space launch. They were young kids, impressionable kids with that memory in 1969. They weren't all that old, like even if they were in their 20s or 30s, like that's the big moment that comes out of the oldest generation right now. You would either, you're talking Kennedy and Man on the Moon. Those are the two big memories. You're not going to open a Carousel of Progress at Disney World with Kennedy getting shot.
No.
So, you go with the progress memory, right? So that becomes the space program at that time frame was of the people that are 90 years old or younger. That's that first memory in that age bracket, right? That's a significant historical moment now. It's the stuff you're talking about is what their parents saw as progress. That's a little more than lore and story being told for them. So if you are truly trying to keep it relevant to the life of the people going in to experience the ride, they're not far off to start in the 60s, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I think that's a fair point. I agree with you that there was no more just insurmountable change in the United States from the time that the world wars ended through, the mid 60s. That time frame just saw so much explosive growth, change, culture, everything else. I mean, music, freedom, it was just a newfound mindset for the entire country, which is an absolutely important part to always be remembered and reflected. But I think in this situation, I understand the thought process of staying relevant to the people you have alive that are coming to the parks.
See, and I think I agree, because I think the 60s to some extent feels like, okay, why are we doing here? And going back to the discussion of Walt and his scene and what that's actually going to look like now that this is what they've decided on for the timeline moving forward, and this is not completely my idea. I saw this in a conversation that I have seen. Somebody said, it'd be really great if the starting scene was kind of an overview of what we're losing, of what they're taking out, and you kind of hit those high points. And I like that idea. And I like that idea of Walt being there to say, my original idea for this ride was about showing the progress of getting electricity, because that's where this started. And going from there. And
yeah, telling the story of the sponsor that paid for it. That's
Exactly.
well,
that's what it really was, if you want to be told.
No, that's it.
My version of Carousel of Progress carried us through these inventions, this progress, whatever. And now I've handed it off to today's Imagineers, who are moving us forward into the decades that current society is, some sort of handoff there. I'd love to see kind of a smooth, even acknowledgement of the current version that we have of, we did it, this is what we covered. And it's important to remember those things, because there were huge changes in those decades that we currently see. But now we're moving into more relevant things that, those of you sitting in the audience today, some of you can remember happening, kind of a thing. I'd love to see Walt kind of pass the torch and mention the fact that there was his version, and now the Imagineers that are entrusted with Disney at this moment are moving you guys even further without, me personally being there, whatever that, sounds like from Walt. I'd love to see some sort of a scene acknowledging the decades that we're getting ready to lose here.
Yeah, that might be and kind of, I think, set it up like a scene setter. And so I thought we'd also kind of walk through. So we talked about this all starts in Act 1 in 1969 with the space launch. Then we jump about 20 years later, not even 20, actually, only 14 years later to 1985. Then we're jumping again about another 15 years in Act 3 to the turn of the century, although technically the turn of the century is 2000 and 2001, but that's another story. So we're at the new millennium, New Year's Eve, 1999, and then we jump and we go to the possible future. And so this is kind of another interesting bit in this whole deal. Our scenes go from the 1960s, specifically 1969, which is almost 1970, and we end in 1999. So we're jumping only a span of 30 years. So, hey, thanks so much for being with us, CLD. We appreciate you being with us.
Good night, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, thank you for being with us. But that's a span of 30 years. Now, you think back to the current Carousel of Progress, that does cover a much larger span of time. So what do you guys think about, Hawk, to use your point about missed opportunities, I am wondering if there's a touch of a missed opportunity here, because there's a lot that's happened from 1999 to 2026 where we are now.
We also have a very short attention span, so I think 30 years is probably, about all people can handle now, without losing interest. But without being funny, that's going to be their biggest challenge. Like, how do you present this in a manner that holds people's attention? How do you present this in a manner where you're getting the point across? Because this methodology is dated, in all fairness. People, the purists may really appreciate this ride. It's going to be a challenge. And I was just listening to another podcast before I jumped over here, and they had an author on, and he was talking about how, it's very hard right now. Disney can't appease everybody, right? There's too many fans. No matter what they do, people are going to say, I don't like this, or I love it, whatever. I feel like Disney misses the boat sometimes and doesn't necessarily appeal to the bulk of the crowds where they should. I think sometimes they get caught up in their own status in their mind that we're Disney, we can do whatever we want, but it doesn't make sense. The Galaxy's, the Star Cruiser Hotel, great example of that. Oh, we're going to make this amazing hotel, but we're going to charge $6,000 for 2 days, and you still have to buy your park tickets. And people are like, what? This isn't worth the money. And all of a sudden you're closing this down a year later, and it wasn't a good decision. but Disney thought they could pull it off because Star Wars fans would be that dedicated. And, you know, it was just unrealistic for a lot of people. So there's certain things where I think they overstep, and I wish that they would have the common sense sometimes to kind of not necessarily do what everyone wants, but at least try to cater to what the mass standing is, right? Like, if everybody's looking for something, try to focus on that. And they're starting to do that with Villains Land and some of the other things. And we've talked about it. I think, you know, they realized maybe they weren't doing enough, and it was going to be a big blowback again. And they're a little gun shy. But Carousel of Progress is going to be an interesting thing, because can you attract people beyond the Disney purists to come enjoy this experience? And does it cater enough to the children and the new generation that they find it interesting and intriguing, and what changes are brought to that? So this is going to be an interesting thing. I'm not going to care enough to go, but I'm just saying it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. So Tom, what do you think about this Act 4? Because once again, I read this, and it's, you know, we see the family one last time in the distant future in an out of this world home. By the way, I'm hearing already, this is stuff reminding me of Spaceship Earth again, but it also reminds me of Horizons, you know? So Tom, what do you think about this fourth act?
They're going to take the screens from Space 220.
Yeah.
This is the one area that I thought just desperately needed updating. I mean, they were talking about laser discs for, you know, 30 years after they're gone, 30, 40 years after they're gone. This was the area where they needed to keep progress going for the last decades, to go in once a year and find some way to update that one scene. But just real quickly, getting back to Hawk's point, will this attract new people to the Carousel of Progress? I hate to say it, but no. I work in an industry that is struggling. As our audience grows older, we're struggling to get young people to watch television news, and they're not doing it. Technology has put them in a different place, and every time we try something, you know, my boss is like, this will attract the kids. And, you know, we always try something new to do that with mixed success. With Carousel Progress, these changes will not draw young people in.
So Tom,
it is a data technology.
So Tom, what if you took it, not even being funny right now, but Act 4, the possible future, you incorporate that with an AI-driven constant update, so that day to day you could actually update that show and change it with current news.
Yeah.
You know, you could almost have it with a daily current event or most recent, you know, NASA, whether it's Artemis, what's going on with stuff, like have it so current that it is literally a carousel of progress that progresses daily.
You know, I think actually, and I love that idea, but I think it's in the wrong spot. I think Act 4 is that, to Tom's point, that's the future. I think it needs to be here. And I think maybe 80s needs to move somewhere else. I think it needs to be there in Act 3, where this is the current state of progress with whatever that current state of progress is. And I love your idea about AI and all that. But then let Act 4 be essentially Horizons all over again, a very short version of Horizons. And here's what's out there that's possible. What do you guys think about something like that? You know, Matt, you're wishy-washy. Tell me why.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you got to keep that 1999 into 2000, because that was just, you know, the Y2K kind of thing. Like, to me, that's just kind of important if you're going to keep it.
You could almost insert one more, right, Matt? Like you could almost insert a quick segment of the current.
Right. Well, if we're going to essentially, 5 acts, essentially? So you're going to add...
There's 4 acts. Yeah.
Right, but in order to kind of keep, like, with what we're going here, because I feel like starting off where they are, like, we're kind of like, you know, either we could push it back a little bit more, or the 60s is kind of like just about right. I mean, the 80s with, if you jump too far forward between like, the 60s to, the year 2000, like to me, that's just too big of a jump. There's too much in the middle of there.
No, I
And if
think
you want to keep something current, like if you want to throw in something current, to me, you almost have to add another act. Because
I
in
think-
between, the year 2000 and now, like there is so much, like, between social media and all that other kind of stuff. So if you want to keep, like, you want to keep that concept, to me, you need another act because the whole point of that last act is the future. Like, what does the future hold in a way? So if we can't really do the future, like we're going to talk about now. That's not now is the future. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. But what if, like Matt, what if they took, Act 3, and then as they wrap up Act 3, you're talking about the millennium change, then you address the technology improvements over that time frame, and then in the last minute, 90 seconds, like it doesn't have to be a long time, but you have AI talk about what's currently going on in the world today. You have something that presents the current situation before you introduce the possible future.
But
Actually,
I think there's
I've
just
got
too
the
much
solution.
in between that, that 20, 25 year span that it lends itself to a whole new act, to its own act. in
Actually,
my
I think I've
personal
got the
opinion.
solution. So, Tom, what do you think about this? So, think about the structure of the Carousel of Progress because they're not going to change. What's that?
What's that?
Tom comes on stage,
Yeah, Tom comes on stage. Here we
and
go.
a cameraman and a news reporter, and gives the. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, there we go.
I've got an idea, but go ahead.
Well, so here's the deal. There's actually 6 sections in the Carousel of Progress. You have the intro slate, that intro bit that's currently there now that just has the Carousel logo. You have your 4 scenes, which of course the last one is a big wide one. But then you have that last one, which is just the "Hi, thanks for coming, get out" scene. What if they take the Walt Disney one, that's scene 1, you go through, and now what was the exit now is the entrance, and you carry on through so that we just, in scene 4, we leave. At the end of scene 4, we just leave. And you've got room now for Act 1, 2, 3, 4, which is now the current reality. And then you have an Act 5. And Act 5 is that space where Act 4 is now. I'm getting a little bit wild here, but what do you think?
I like that idea. What I would actually do is drop a screen, a scrim, or something, and slow down the progression where it revolves, and have like a 1-minute video collage of the progress made as you transition from the time period as you transition from one.
While
section
it's
to the next.
turning?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, and
Now, that would
while
be
it's
cool.
turning, you're seeing, you're going from, I don't know, scenes of great progress, because we're ending in the 90s with the internet. Well, then let's start bringing in cell phones and big news events. Obviously, you don't want to do things like the Twin Towers or anything, but positive, progressive things that happened. Put it on a scrim and project it like... or even just a big video screen, and that helps the transition as you see the big events of that time period until you get to the next scene.
I could see that working really well.
I think it worked really well. There was one of my favorite shows. How many people have been to Dollywood? But they had a show for many years, the Dreamland Diner, and it dealt with like 40 years. And in between scenes, they would have this big screen, and it dealt with all the music and the popular things that happen as the characters age. And I think something like that would be
That would be really cool to do that kind of transition. What do you guys think? Would that help, even if it was like, let's assume that the Walt Disney intro scene is more kind of what we expected from months ago, and it's just going to be Walt kind of talking about his dream for Walt Disney World and Epcot and all that. But then the screen does drop, and it transitions, and it kind of catches you up from the current carousel to Carousel 2.
I like the idea of getting more information without it adding to the time that you're going to spend on the attraction. So everything just kind of keeps going. I think, to Matt's point about everything that we've seen in the 25 years since the millennial, everybody expected the lights to go off, the computers to crash and all this stuff, and none of that happened for the most part. And then social media didn't exist when we're talking about the end of Act 3. I would personally, because I love Grandma in this family, and I love the way that she plays in scenes, and I love the way this family interacts in that last scene as it currently is.
Don't take this wrong. She's dead now.
Well, yes, but all of this family is changing. It doesn't sound like they're changing all that much.
No. Grandma's here, right here in Act 3. Right Grandma is once again sneaking over to wrestling.
She's never gonna die, Hawk. She'll live forever. But I would love to see.
She's sitting on top of the mantle now.
They snark at each other, and I would love a scene dedicated to like all of the different. Where you mention, Grandma's like, well, but my MySpace page, and the grandkids are like, MySpace, what in the world is that? And, somebody's on Twitter, but Twitter is X, and X isn't important, and we're doing that, because social media alone blew up our world. It changed so much in the last 25 years, and there's so many iterations that some of it doesn't even exist anymore.
It's changed a lot in the last 25 minutes.
After, you could start with any of that stuff.
But here's the thing, though, Megan. Realistically, what is the Carousel of Progress going to accomplish as far as educating people to the history? You've got to pick like 3 individual events.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't.
I'm just saying, I personally would love to see that scene.
Transition. I'm just saying there should be something that stays current all the time. However you put that in there doesn't really even matter to me. There just needs to be some semblance of relevancy to this day, or this Carousel of Progress is not progressing. Because what I think it misses even now, and to Tom's point, the scenes in it for the future are so outdated that our grandparents didn't own the stuff they're talking about. Like, I mean, it's so outdated, it's ridiculous. So you've got to find some way, and with technology now, it's easily possible to keep the progress relevant, right? You have to. Otherwise, you might as well change the name. It might as well be the Carousel of History, because it's not. If you're trying to do what the name suggests, you've got to keep it relevant.
And I think that's where you lose me on Act 4 here, because when I look at that description, my first thought is that's the Jetsons. The Jetsons have been our idea of progress for how many decades now? Like, this is exactly what I thought we were going to be doing now when I was a kid watching a cartoon, and we're still not there. How is, like, and so this
we have playing cards, Megan, and we have robot maids. We have them. They may not name them Rosie, but we have them.
I do not have a robot that cooks for me, cleans for me, does all those things. Like, no. I'm not going through. I'm not jumping on a conveyor belt to get showered and dressed by a robot every time. Oops,
you're not?
Lost my camera. Not sure what happened. I should be, but I'm not. And so it doesn't feel like the progress that they're listing here is any different than the progress that we were talking about 50 years ago. How is this different? So this doesn't even feel like the future to me, because I'm not even sure it's coming at this point.
Well,
I think. Go ahead, Tom.
Tell you what you're going to do here. They're starting with the moon launch. They're going to an out of this world home. They're going to be on a moon base. They're going to wrap it up in a neat picture. So they're going to start with the moon. They're going to end with the moon, and they figure that's still far enough away that they can get away for the next 20, 30 years. But they've got to update this one constantly.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be that difficult.
And I do think that's where I think that idea of having 5 scenes might help that, because first and foremost, I'm okay with Act 1 starting at the 60s just because that's the space launch. Tom, I'm with you. Maybe the 40s would be good. You got to start somewhere, so I'll give them that one. That to me, this whole idea of the 80s, while I love the 80s, I'm essentially somewhat of a kid of the 80s. This is a scene that needs to go, and you needed to do something. Frankly, I don't know that it's too big of a jump from 1969, which essentially is 1970, to 1999. That's 29-year jump.
That's a pretty big jump.
30-year jump, but I think it's okay. But you need that. I think you need that additional something to then have, Act 4 being the current to Hawk's point, because that's just critical to have current event. And this is what the current technology is, because when we stop in 1999, whoops, and we lost Megan.
I just want to point out, Elon Musk knows Megan is in Texas.
Yeah.
And is so offended by the words that she was just saying about the Jetsons not being here. He eviscerated her.
Yeah, he's come in and apparently hacked us and taken it out. But
her packing, he's very upset.
Yeah, but I think that this is, first of all, remember Walt Disney said, specifically talking about, a little bit broader about the parks, that Disneyland will never be complete; it will always be a state of becoming. And so with that, Carousel of Progress, I think, is in the same boat. And so, I'm okay with the fact that we're going to go ahead and update this. But I think it's how are they updating this that gives
Chuck,
me a little bit of pause.
What would you do to update the ride itself, though? Because how can you make this more like right now? It's a rotating theater. It is the ultimate boring,
it's an air-conditioned rotating theater.
It is an air-conditioned rotating theater.
It's air conditioning, but talk to everybody. Nobody has watched the whole Carousel of Progress show. They're asleep by Act 2 because it's the greatest place to take a nap on Earth at Disney.
Hall of Presidents.
But either one, like snooze, at least the Hall of Presidents held my attention. I did not. I was out both times I was in there.
Well,
it was a great big, beautiful snore.
Nap time. Yeah, I get it.
What was going on?
Well, I think to the point again is about relevancy, and so some of that is that the idea of here at the turn of the century, meaning the turn of from the 19th century to the 20th century, is doing this, that, and the other. We can't begin to relate to that because it's so far in our history. Now, I think this will help. However, I think that, because what is the Carousel of Progress? Essentially, it's just the history of technology. That's what it is. It's the history of technology.
Hear me out.
Go ahead.
You remember the fairground rides that were called the Gravitron?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, are you going to go there?
Lean against the board, and it would slide you up. The faster you went, you could lean out and try to Superman if you were feeling real aggressive, but it would exhaust you so much it eventually slap your body right back against the wall. I think we make an old person version of the Gravitron. We nail a lazy boy to the wall on one of those planks that will go up and down the faster you go, but everybody sits there and you spin into the next scene like you're in a time warp. So you crank it up, settle down, watch your little display, little dizzy, and woo, and then they fire it up again, and you go through that 4 times. If you're lucky enough to survive Carousel of Progress, it can kind of be like the rotation version of Tower of Terror. It just spin around, get your education, but thrill ride the heck out of it. I'm all in on this. I think I would ride that Carousel of Progress.
To say nothing about the insurance issues, but that's a whole different ball game. Yeah, there'd be a lot of
lawyers
issues
are going to make an appearance on this episode.
Here come the lawyers again. That's right. But one of the things I think that we could do, Tom, and what do you think about this? Because I go back to Horizons again. One of the elements of Horizons that was really, really cool was at the end you got to choose your own ending. But the concept of that really is interactivity. And I think that to Hawk's point, there's a way to add a level, multiple levels, frankly, of interactivity into this whole thing. It's maybe to the point where throughout the show, somehow you're interacting. Yes, I hate to sit there and say, bring out your phone. But, if they're going to be on their phones, let's at least try and make use of it. And somehow whatever the audience choices are influences the final scene.
I think it'd be brilliant, and honestly, I don't think it would be that difficult to do. I mean, look at the real time animation stuff we have in Laugh Factory and all that. I think that would be real easy to do, and it would personalize it. Now that might actually get the young people to get on the ride. They have a vote in what to say. Uh, Maybe even the narration changes to include their name or something. I
Right.
don't know.
Because with magic bands and things like that, that information is pulled. They did that on It's a Small World for a while. You saw your name saying goodbye, whatever in your name, and so
Yeah, ET.
bringing
Yeah.
a level of interaction, I think, could be very helpful throughout the attraction, and in some way, shape, form, even if it's very subtle, that you bring some interactivity into it to try to again create something, because I think that's what younger audiences want. They love that level of interactivity. It's not passive; it's active.
And there's where you're really talking about the progression of technology.
Yeah, really.
They need something in the last scene that's going to dazzle people, and it has the ability to ever change and dazzle them in the future. And they're not talking about laser discs on the moon.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. And
Yeah,
so,
it's got to be the relevancy to the people that are in there, and that is going to change so fast because it's going to change every. I mean, right now, look at it, we all use AI. Look at where we were 2 years ago with where AI is, and look where we ourselves, just by starting by asking a few questions, how much further along in your prompting ability and everything else are you over where you were just 2 years ago? And the technology really hasn't drastically changed. It's we're learning how to use new tools. AI doesn't even think for itself. It just references information. But the more you're able to prompt into it, you can get the answers you need. You can get the information you need. You find ways to do stuff. This evolves constantly. If they don't find a way to make that change, the problem, and this is what Disney and other theme parks are facing as challenges. You build a great theme park. Epic Universe was amazing, right? People 6 months later are talking about, that ride's okay now. They're already bored of it and want the next new thing. Like Disney faces the challenge of that nostalgic past. Now you've got purists that love the nostalgic side of things, but you want to market to people and families and get people coming and bringing money into these parks. You've got to stay relevant. And it is so, look at what Disney's working on for projects right now. When was the last time that all 4 parks had major construction zones where did you see it like that in the 70s, 80s? Not, obviously not all 4 parks existed until the 2096, but you start to realize that Disney did smaller segmented projects. Now Disney has 20 things going on at one time because the need has come where people aren't willing to wait. The expectation for instant gratification is right now. They've got to find ways to stay relevant in everything they're doing. And this particular ride is an example of how they can set that precedent and really do that and truly make a carousel of progress.
Yeah, and that's the only way it'll succeed.
Yeah, otherwise dump it. Build something new and put a thrill coaster there. Please.
So as we wrap up, we're going to ask one last question. And so, we'll start with Thom. Will the younger daughter survive? And if so, will she actually get a name? For those who might remember, in the very first scene of the current Carousel of Progress, we see the younger daughter, I guess doing the washing machine or something like that, spinning whatever. We don't know her name, and she never appears again. So, will the younger daughter survive? And if so, will she get a name?
Yeah, she's Chuck from Happy Days, for those old enough to remember that. Well, I would hope so. I mean, obviously they want relevance. They need somebody her age, so I would hope she would. But now, what I want is a commitment here. This is going to reopen in 87. Good gosh, 2027. So the next time I'm down there after it opens, I want Hawk to join me on the Carousel of Progress.
Yeah, Hawk agrees. He'll do it. He'll do it. In
And
the interest of research, he'll do it.
Tom, only if you agree to come over to Universal and ride Velocicoaster with me.
Oh, a deal. I'd do that in a heartbeat.
All right, you're on.
Yep.
Should we all sing the song?
No. No.
We don't want to offend our listeners any more than we already have. But
what do you think the odds are they wind up with a new song?
No.
Oh,
oh no, and I think they've already said that.
They've
I
said
think
that it's going to be.
yeah, I think that it was somewhere in there. It was going to be that the song was going to stick around.
Yeah.
I bet there's different music styles, though.
So much for progress.
Yeah, as it says, that includes the iconic "There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow," which will continue to play as guests transition between scenes. So
I
that
bet
will
be different versions.
there very well could be.
Like You Spin Me Round from the 80s.
Yeah. Right round, baby, right round. So this does, by the way, bring us to our obvious question of the week. What do you think about the proposed changes to the Carousel of Progress? So hop on to the Mousecast Facebook page at Mousecast 2025 on Facebook and share your thoughts about the proposed changes to the Carousel of Progress, and we will announce the results on next week's Mousecast, which will be open mic night, where you get to talk about the topics, and who knows, maybe we'll be talking more about Carousel of Progress by next week as well.
Hey, Tom, I want to thank you for coming on and bringing your insight in. I love your passion for this ride. I really, truly do. And even though it is not something I'm a fan of, I love seeing people that have a connection to something at Disney that really means something, taking the time to learn the history behind it, taking the time to truly understand it. Like, we joke, we poke our fun on the show and everything else, but I have the utmost respect for people that really truly find appreciation in what Walt Disney did, what he started with, the vision he had, and understand how to respect that. And I think there's a lot of great fans that are even young that continue to idolize and cherish and look at Walt's vision and look at things. But it is refreshing to see people that have that understanding. I am very cynical about a lot of stuff. I know this shocks people. However, the reality is Walt was such an amazing brand man, marketer. I mean, he linked those partnerships early on, and that continued through his brother and people after him to get those sponsorships in place, get people that were putting money into rides to build them and sponsor them and work those costs down. But that, GE was the brand. But a lot of people forget that was literally a product sponsored experience that was done with his vision and assistance, but it was by GE, and you had everything from McDonald's at the dinosaur ride in Animal Kingdom. You've had Delta Airlines. Was it Delta that did it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
It was Delta, right? I just want to make sure I'm quoting the right airlines on the old ride. But there's been so many sponsorships through the years.
Well, if you're talking about If You Were Wings, it was Eastern first, then Delta.
Okay, that's right. It started with Eastern. Delta didn't feel right, but
Yeah.
that's
It was
right.
Delta Dreamflight. First, it was Eastern
That's
If You Had
right.
Wings, then Delta Dreamflight. Yep.
That's right. But those things are just really amazing parts of the park that a lot of people don't remember. They don't reflect on. Everybody's looking for the new great thing. So I have a lot of respect for you and the fact that you carry on the original vision of Walt. You appreciate what he did, and you also are crazy enough to really love the Carousel of Progress. So God bless you. That
Well, we
makes
also
Thank
want to
you, I
say a
appreciate
huge thank you to Tom being on. If nothing else, just putting up with Hawk. That alone is cruel and unusual punishment, and so you want to say a huge thank you to Tom, and we hope that you come back. We'd love to have you back on Mousecast anytime.
I enjoyed it. I've tried to behave myself tonight, so maybe next time I won't.
Well, there we go. We want to say a huge thank you, and by the way, Tom, who has been in the chat and joined us for many shows, join us as well. We are live every Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on Facebook at Mousecast 2025, right here on YouTube. Just search Mousecast. We want to say again a huge thank you to Matt, Megan, who just dropped off, and Hawk, and of course our special guest, Thom Brewer. This is Mousecast, the podcast where the mind meets the magic. Remember, next week, open mic night, so definitely be there. Until then, we'll see you.
Thank you for listening to Mousecast. We appreciate the time you share with us. And tonight was a very fun show. And joining us is a must. This is where the mind meets the magic. We dive a little deeper every time. Theme parks, cruise ships, and travel. If you don't listen, maybe now it's time.